and I call the Prime Minister with arrangements.
I inform the House that the Minister for Climate Change and Energy will be absent from question time today.
Order.
The Treasurer will answer questions on his behalf.
Order.
The Minister for Emergency Management will be absent from question time today. She's visiting the impacted areas of Tropical Cyclone Fina in the Northern Territory. The Minister for Home Affairs will answer questions on emergency management. The Minister for Infrastructure will answer questions on regional development, local government and territories.
Before we move to questions without notice, I'm pleased to inform the House that present in the gallery today is a delegation from Vietnam, led by His Excellency Mr Chen Hong Ha, the Deputy Prime Minister of Vietnam. Accompanying the delegation is His Excellency Mr Pham Hung Tam, the Ambassador to Vietnam to Australia. On behalf of all members, welcome to question time. We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? I give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has said the Minister for Energy will have, quote, unprecedented influence in global climate negotiations as the President of COP31 negotiations. Why isn't this part-time Minister, full-time President, using this unprecedented influence to lower energy bills for Australians? And, Prime Minister, by what date will the average household power bill be lower than it is today?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for the question, and I can imagine question time tactics this morning, because there's about 5 different questions in there.
Order.
But they have in there 2 consistent points. One is the consistent position that those opposite have of talking Australia down. Always talking Australia down.
Order.
Including
on my left.
including talking down Australia's national interests and the interests of the Pacific. Now, I spoke with Prime Minister Rambuka and Prime Minister Marape and other Pacific leaders last week. They are delighted that Australia and the Pacific will be able to play a role in international climate change engagement. I attended the G20 meeting over recent days. There, a communique issued by every single country supporting the Paris Agreement, supporting a reduction in emissions, recognising that it's not a choice between a strong economy and sustainability, that in order to have a strong economy you need to deal with the challenge and the threat of climate change, which is real. During the last, since we rose here as well, just a couple of weeks ago, of course, we had the treaty and negotiations with Indonesia. And Indonesia is a place pretty important for Australia, one would have thought. Jakarta is looking at building, or Indonesia is looking at building a seawall around Jakarta. This decision of the COP to have Minister Bowen to also have the position of being in charge of negotiations is something that I would have thought was pretty good. I'll tell you a meeting I had with someone over the weekend as well. I had a meeting with the OECD Secretary-General, Matthias Cormann. Matthias Cormann, who we backed to be OECD Secretary-General and who we backed to get a second term again. So both here and overseas, we'll build Australia up. The Coalition talks Australia down. They don't have a plan, they just have a pamphlet. It's a pamphlet which is a continuation of the 23 policies that they had and didn't land one. It will, of course, lead to higher prices because less investment means higher prices. That is why it is friendless in the energy sector, friendless in the business community, and that is perhaps why Don't Know is the front runner to lead those opposite.
Order. The House comes to order. We'll hear from the member for Bendigo.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. What are some of the ways that the Albanese Labor government is delivering for Australians and making a positive difference to their lives? Are there any risks to delivering that agenda?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Bendigo for her question. And on Saturday, 100,000 Australians got a text message from the government. It's a short message, but it will have a massive impact. Well, they do love that, because it told them that their student debt had gone down by 20%, something that was opposed by those opposite, like they oppose every single cost of living measure which there is. The first 100,000 of about 3 million Australians who will be better off. By the end of this week, more than 1 million Australians will have got their text message informing them, that this will make a difference to them, making it that bit easier to get the start in life they want, whether it's starting a family, saving for a house. I want our government's policies to help Australians achieve their priorities, just like our 5% deposit scheme for home buyers, that is helping young Australians to get into the housing market. Since October 1, nearly 10,000 Australians have bought their home using a 5% deposit, promised by us, delivered by us, to the benefit of Australians. That is our government's focus. The Coalition's focus on themselves, they're focused on tearing each other down and talking Australia down. Nothing's changed. They are divided, divisive and despairing. We're delivering right now in real time.
Fisher.
That's what we do every day, and it's what drives every single member of our government.
Call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Australians have a part-time energy minister delivering a part-time energy grid. This part-time energy minister, full-time president, is absent from parliament today, prioritising global summits ahead of reducing power prices for Australians. Prime Minister, how many days will the part-time minister spend overseas in his new role as full-time president?
Order. The Minister for Social Services will cease interjecting. Prime Minister has the call.
I thank the member for her question, and it goes to a couple of issues. It goes to energy, and it also goes to the role that Minister Bowen will have in the COP negotiations. Now, I don't know if those opposite have participated very much in international forums, but if they had, it's a bit like other things. The crunch points of negotiations comes at the end, comes when the conference is on. That's what happens. But in the lead up to that, there will be a meeting in the Pacific about climate change. You know why? Because it's the priority. The priority. It's the first priority, the second priority and the third priority. Because without action on climate change, countries like Kiribati and Tuvalu will disappear. Underwater.
Order.
And those opposite thought it was fine to make jokes about water lapping at the doors. That was what they did when they were in government.
Members on my left.
To
Member
improve
for Forrest.
relations with our Pacific Island families. That was their response, and every single one of them remembers that. That, Mr Speaker.
Member
every single one of them.
Barker.
But it is indeed should be a source of bipartisan pride when Australians succeed. Just like when we bid for the UN Security Council, those opposite talked it down, opposed the bid, just like they opposed people running for positions at the United Nations. We on this side don't do that. We on this side back Australia. Back Australia is what we do. Now, I'm asked about power and I'm asked about the difference it will make. Now, there have been some business reactions to the Coalition's dumping of net zero, a policy that the Leader of the Opposition supported before a few weeks ago, a policy that was put in place by the Morrison government.
Order. Members on my right, the manager is entitled to raise his point of order, and he shall do so now.
Just on relevance, the Prime Minister wasn't asked about our policy, he was asked about President Bowen's overseas schedule.
Well, Prime Minister has outlined his answer to the question that he was directly asked about, and now he's. So I don't know else where he's going with this, but I'll make sure he's being directly relevant to the question he was asked. Prime Minister, in continuation.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and I was asked about power prices in Australia. And Australian Industry Group said this, Innes Willox, there's no industry interest in going backward on net zero. Reopening that debate is akin to asking Australian businesses to stop investing and stand by to watch the political equivalent of a refight of the Battle of Stalingrad. It serves no good purpose. No good purpose. And the ACCI chair, Andrew McKellar, said to characterise their policy at the moment, it seems to be a bit of a plan not to have a plan, unfortunately. Dead right.
Order. The Manager of Opposition Business, members on my left, we're not going to have that level of interjection. Order. Whilst I'm bringing the House to order, thank the Manager for his contribution, but we'll just get the House to settle. Now we'll hear from the member for Forde.
My question is to the Minister for Education. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to build a better and fairer education system, including helping Australians with student debt? What other approaches have been put forward?
Call to the Minister for Education.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank my friend the member for Forde for his question and that very handsome mow that he's growing there, all the work he's doing to promote Movember. Mr Speaker, on the weekend 100,000 Australians had their student debt cut by 20%. And that is just the start, because this Thursday 1.5 million more Australians will get their student debt cut by 20%. And next week another 1.5 million young Australians will get their student debt cut by 20%. And you don't need to do a thing. Just wait for the ding. Just wait for the text message. Wait for the email that you'll get from the tax office to tell you that it's done. Mr Speaker, this is the biggest cut to student debt in Australian history. The average Australian with a student debt will see it cut by about $5,500. And that's a lot of money that's going to help a lot of Australians. We promised it. Australia voted for it, and now we're delivering it. And the Liberal Party, remember, are still opposed to it. In fact, they hate it. Today, earlier in Parliament, the member for Goldstein described this as one of the most despicable things that he's ever seen a Labor government do. Well, I think I know 3 million Australians who might disagree with him, and their mum and dad and their grandparents. But it's not the only thing that we're doing, Mr Speaker. Next year we'll train more doctors than ever before. Today the Health Minister and I are announcing more medical places to train more doctors at 10 universities across the country. And next year more Australians will also start a university degree than ever before. We're funding an extra 9,500 places next year, an extra 16,000 places the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. The number of Australians at uni will jump by 27% over the next 10 years to help to build the sort of workforce that we're going to need. More doctors, more nurses, more teachers, more engineers and lots more. And a lot of those young people will be from poor families and from our outer suburbs, from our regions and from the bush. That's what the reforms that we're implementing are all about. It's what the Prime Minister calls opening the doors of opportunity for more Australians. Building a country where your chances in life don't depend on how wealthy your parents are, or where you grew up, or what school you went to, or the colour of your skin.
Before I call the honourable member for Wentworth, I'm pleased to acknowledge and welcome a few guests to the Parliament today. In the gallery today are representatives of Netball Australia, as well as current members of the Australian netball team, the Diamonds. We also have a delegation from the 2025 Country to Canberra Leadership Competition, which aims to empower young rural women. I'm also advised that Dr Jim Turner, the former member for Leichhardt, and Dr Kay Patterson AO, former Senator of Victoria and Minister, is with us today in the gallery. Welcome to you all. Give the call to the honourable member for Wentworth.
My question is for the Housing and Homelessness Minister. Today's Rental Affordability Index shows only 2% of rentals are affordable for essential workers like teachers. The New Homes Bonus was supposed to incentivise new homes and help fix this, but with just the ACT likely to meet this target, the effectiveness of this incentive is under question. Will you consider restructuring the bonus scheme so there are interim payments to help the states do critical rezoning, speed up approvals and build the infrastructure the states need to actually deliver these targets?
Give the call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Thank you, Speaker. And could I thank the member for Wentworth for her question? It's a really good one, and I think it reflects the real seriousness with which she engages in the housing debate. Speaker, we've got a crossbench here where, for many of these wonderful people, housing is a critical issue in their community, and they work very collaboratively with our government, and the member for Wentworth is one of those. Speaker, the member for Wentworth asks about the situation facing Australian renters, and I agree with her. This is a really critical concern of our government. We've got a housing crisis in our country that's been cooking for 40 years, and really the people who are bearing the biggest brunt of this are people who are in rental accommodation. They're feeling it in rents going up too fast and too frequently. They feel it in the lack of power that they have in negotiating with their landlords. And, Speaker, a very distressing share of the nation's renters tell us that they are actually actively fearing practically becoming homeless, and that should not be happening in a country like Australia. So one thing that the member for Wentworth has been really constructive in working with the government on, Speaker, is understanding really what the crux of this issue facing our rental population is, and that is for this 40-year period our country hasn't been building enough homes. For a long time in Australia, the Commonwealth Government washed its hands of this problem. As you know, Speaker, for most of the time that those opposite were in government, they were so checked out of housing they didn't even have a housing minister to negotiate with. We have changed that, and one of the main ways that we're engaging with states and territories is through something called the National Housing Accord. So, Speaker, instead of saying that our government wouldn't take any responsibility, the Prime Minister's actually stepped up. He's sat down with state and territory leaders across the country, including local government and the private sector, and said if we want to get a change here, we need to make a difference to how our housing system works.
The Minister will pause for a moment and just take a seat while I hear from the member for Wentworth on a point of order.
On relevance, the question was specifically about the New Homes Bonus.
The Minister was asked a question regarding the home bonus, and the Minister was also asked about restructuring to help the states deliver the targets. So I just caution her to make sure her answer is being directly relevant. It was a fairly specific question that the member Wentworth has asked, and if she could provide more information regarding that, I think that would assist the House and also help the standing orders as well.
The reason I'm talking about the National Housing Accord is because the $3 billion New Homes Bonus that the member asked me about sits at the end of the National Housing Accord. So we are in constant negotiation and discussion with the states. We've got a problem in our country where it's become too hard, too difficult, too expensive and too lengthy to get a home built in this country, and the states are critically important to solving that problem, have more power over that, frankly, than the Commonwealth does, and that's why they are such key partners of ours. The $3 billion incentive that the member asked me about, as she's mentioned, sits at the end of the Accord targets, and of course the states are always keen to see that money flowing to them faster. But what I would say to the member is that the $43 billion package that sits across all of our housing policies, whether it's building more homes, getting renters a better deal and getting more Australians into home ownership, quite a deal of that money actually flows through the states. So we had, as part of the original negotiation, $1.5 billion in infrastructure funding. Much of that flowed to the states. Round 2 of the Housing Australia Future Fund completely went to the states. We've got $10 billion, which is going to the states to deliver 100,000 homes, and $2 billion that went to them for social housing. So there's a really strong partnership there and quite a lot of money flowing through those states at the moment.
Give the call to the honourable member for Swan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to ease cost of living and modernise the Australian economy? How does that compare to other approaches?
The call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Speaker, and thanks to the member for Swan. It was only last week that the Employment Minister and I joined with the member for Swan to celebrate the news that Australia has just ticked over 2 consecutive years of real wages growth in our economy, the 8th consecutive quarter of real wages growth in our economy, and that comes after real wages were falling 5 consecutive quarters when we came to office. In fact, real wages were falling sharply. They're now growing again. That's a deliberate design feature of our economic policy. So that's the news we got last week. The week before that, we learned that unemployment had gone down once again. And under this government, the lowest average unemployment of any government in half a century, 1.2 million jobs, 4 in every 5 of them are in the private sector, Mr Speaker. And so what we are doing with our tax cuts, with our approach to the labour market, is ensuring that more Australians are working, earning more and keeping more of what they earn, Mr Speaker. Now, we're ensuring that at the same time as we roll out cost of living relief in our economy. 2 more tax cuts are on the way. We've got more bulk billed GP visits because we know that means less pressure on families. We've got cheaper medicines. And as the Education Minister said a moment ago, we're providing student debt relief as well, Mr Speaker. And at the same time as we're rolling out that cost of living relief, creating jobs, getting wages moving again, creating opportunities in our economy, we're also modernising Australia's economy over the medium and long term as well. We're approving more homes, we're slashing tariffs, we're winding back red tape where we can, we're revitalising national competition policy, we're strengthening and streamlining the foreign investment regime, and we're reforming the EPBC as well, which will deliver faster approvals for projects that are in Australia's interests and faster knockbacks for projects that are not. I'll also meet on Friday, Mr Speaker, with the state and territory treasurers to advance our very substantial agenda to make our economy more productive and competitive across the federation as well, Mr Speaker. Now, we know as a government that we have much more work to do, but we have also made good progress cleaning up the mess that we inherited from those opposite, as well as modernising our economy. And we've made good progress since the Economic Reform Roundtable as well, Mr Speaker. We acknowledge that in the lead-up to the budget we will do even more. But, Mr Speaker, as I hear them chirping away over there, Mr Speaker, I finish on this point. Whether it's cost of living relief or economic reform, what is really clear is that this government finishes the year united, focused on Australians and delivering for Australians, Mr Speaker. Those opposite finish the year focused on themselves, recklessly divisive and hopelessly divided.
The call to the honourable member for Wannon.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. An energy sector CEO has recently said of power price rises, quote, "It's the calm before the storm." And I think the storm is coming around cost and competitiveness. Prime Minister, if the 40% price rises that Australians have faced under the Albanese government are just the calm, what percentage power price rise is the storm going to bring?
Call to the Prime Minister. Order. Members on my right will cease interjecting. The member was given the courtesy to be heard in silence. The Prime Minister will be given that same courtesy as well, and he now has the call.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for his question about what the energy sector and the business community think about energy policy in this country. The Australian Energy Council CEO Louise Kinnear has said this: keeping coal open for longer is likely to increase costs rather than decrease costs. And it also means there's not the right market signals for new renewable investment to come in because coal is still sitting there in the system. We can't keep coal in the system forever. There is a large proportion that do need to exit. Now, the Australian Industry Group, I've quoted before, Ennis Willicks, said that there was no interest in going backward on net zero. The Business Council of Australia CEO, Bram Black, said this: We need to make sure that we continue to guarantee Australia as a competitive place in which to do business. What that means in very practical terms is that we need to have a clear plan and pathway towards what that net zero looks like. So there is, went on to say, so that there is the confidence to invest. Andrew McKellar, CEO of ACCI. Business does need certainty. If we're going to get the investment in place for the future, then we need to understand what the policy is. To characterise their policy at the moment, it seems to be a bit of a plan not to have a plan, unfortunately. Now, the Louise Kinnear, Australian Energy Council, when talking about the way forward, said we're now on a trajectory for a high renewable system supported by gas, battery storage and pumped hydro, and that is generally going to deliver the lowest cost outcome. So that's what the experts actually had to say.
Leader of the Opposition.
Because when they were in office, we had an energy system that was 50 years old. So 24 out of 28 coal-fired power stations announced their closure and nothing replaced them. You had 4 gigawatts leave the system and 1 gigawatt enter the system. As a result of a lack of supply, increases costs. What we're dealing with now is how you transition. Those opposite pretend that that's not the case. They pretend because they're too busy fighting the ongoing climate wars that have been in place on their side for decades now, holding Australia back.
Has the Prime Minister concluded his answer? The member for Wannon, under the standing orders, will take his point of order now.
Yeah, relevance. The question was around power prices, and you haven't mentioned power prices once, and they're going through the roof.
Your seat. The member for Wannon knows that he can raise the point of order, but doesn't need to add extra to when he's stating the point of order for any other theatrics. The Prime Minister has been talking about power prices and quoting directly about the comments he was asked about, so he's being directly relevant. He has the call.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I've spoken directly about power prices and what the lowest cost form of transition is. Those opposite had 23 plans. They're still fighting each other.
Member for Page.
Still fighting each other, Mr. Speaker. One thing is very clear. Love is not what will stop them tearing each other apart, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order. The member for Riverina, I can hear very well today. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Paterson.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Defence. How is the Albanese Labor government progressing AUKUS, and what other approaches are being put forward?
Call to the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Defence.
Well, I thank the member for her question. Last Wednesday, the Prime Minister and the Premier of Western Australia were at HMAS Sterling in Rockingham, which right now is hosting the USS Vermont, a US Navy Virginia-class submarine which is undergoing the most extensive maintenance on an American nuclear-powered submarine outside of America ever. And this work is being undertaken by 120 Australian workers, and that too is unique in terms of non-Americans working on a US submarine. But well before the Vermont reached Western Australia, it already had a distinctly Australian character because of the 130-odd crew, 11 submariners and 2 officers. Fully 10% of the crew are Australians, enlisted in the Royal Australian Navy. And this is a powerful example, but it's just one example of the way in which today AUKUS is happening. And that's what serious defence policy looks like, which could not be further from what we see from those opposite, because the very next day the Leader of the Opposition delivered a keynote speech on defence. Now, amidst various utterances on defence spending, there were no details about the platforms on which they would spend the defence budget. There were no details about the kind of defence force the coalition would build. There were no details about their strategic intent. Indeed, the speech was reminiscent of the defence policy vacuum which was so eloquently described by the Liberal Party's own election review. But overshadowing all of—
Order. The Deputy Prime Minister will resume his seat and the manager will take his point of order.
Well, on relevance, the member asked a relevant question about AUKUS, and there's been a serious change of leadership in AUKUS that the minister hasn't advised the House about. He's talking about Liberal Party
Resume
reviews.
your seat. Yeah. He was asked about what other approaches are being put forward. So, whilst it wasn't a straight AUKUS question, the member for Moncrieff, just dealing with the manager's point of order, he wasn't asked about alternative policies, but he was asked about alternative approaches being put forward. He's got 1 minute remaining. I'll just ask him to be directly relevant to the question he was asked, and the remainder can't be completely about the opposition because he wasn't asked about opposition policy, it was about approaches. The Deputy Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Speaker. What overshadowed the Leader of the Opposition's defence speech was that within 24 hours we had the Shadow Minister briefing out that he'd absolutely not been consulted on it, which is a demonstration that no matter what they are talking about, what fundamentally characterises the coalition is that they are deeply divided. But then again, why would the Leader of the Opposition consult with this Shadow Minister when in this very week you've got Brutus 1 here and Brutus 2 up there engaging in the most unedifying knife-sharpening competition,
the Prime
while
Minister
those opposite—
will just pause. Order. 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 Look, I know it's order. We're not going anywhere until everyone— The member for Bruce is warned. I know it's the last week. I'm just going to ask the Deputy Prime Minister to temper his language, and he has 8 seconds left.
While those opposite are focused on themselves, the Albanese government is focused on delivering for our nation to keep Australians safe.
Give the call to the Leader of the Nationals.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, there are less than 5 weeks left in 2025. When will Australian families receive your promised $275 reduction to their power bills?
Give the call to the Minister representing— Order. No, give the call to the Minister representing the Minister for Energy. Order. The member for Hume. Order. When the House comes to the member for Fisher. Order. Order. We're not going to continue in this way. The Minister representing the Minister for Energy has the call.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Speaker, and thanks to the Leader of the Nationals for his question. As we have made it really clear, Mr Speaker, and has the relevant experts, the Prime Minister read out a few of them a moment ago, has made really clear, Australia's best chance to put downward pressure on electricity prices is from introducing cleaner, cheaper, more renewable, more reliable energy sources. Now, Mr Speaker, that never used to be, or that for a long time wasn't an especially controversial proposition. Even those opposite held that view, Mr Speaker. I'm asked the question by the Leader of the Nationals. The Leader of the Nationals said once before, when he had a more sensible position on this, it's a good thing that renewables are coming on. The disruptions that are happening with the technology moving towards renewable energy, particularly in storage for baseload, is exciting. I think it's a good thing. Mr Speaker, he also said economics will win out in the end, and if baseload power can be stored in particular, that's an exciting thing for the environment and for everyone's hip pocket, Mr Speaker. He says, in my own electorate, people are self-sustaining through solar. The reality is that type of disruption is happening, and that is an exciting thing, not only for the environment but for the hip pocket, Mr Speaker.
Treasurer will pause. Order. The Minister for Health. I want to hear from the member for Page.
Thank you, Speaker. The point of order is on relevance. It was a very tight question about the $275 promise to lower bills from the Prime Minister.
I understand the Treasurer is quoting the person who asked him the question. So if you're asking a question and the person probably will open themselves up for comments for what they have said as well. I think that's a long-established tradition. If he's going to go into too much other alternative policies, he won't be able to do so. But he's had halfway through, and I'll make sure he's being directly relevant to the question he was asked about from the Leader of the Nationals. But if the Leader of the Nationals asks a question, ergo, you're going to get some blowback or pushback about what you were from the person asking the question. The Treasurer in continuation.
Yeah, Mr Speaker, I'm asked about power bills and I'm answering a question about power bills, reminding the House that the Leader of the Nationals once had a more sensible position on this. Now, the upward pressure on electricity prices in our energy grid, Mr Speaker, doesn't come from the new, cleaner, cheaper, renewable, reliable energy. It comes from the legacy of 22 failed energy policies, which saw 4 gigawatts of energy come out of the grid on their watch.
Treasurer will pause. Treasurer will pause. Treasurer will pause. No. Treasurer will pause. This yelling is not going to continue. Interjections are one thing, but the carry-on is way too much. Everyone in the gallery can see that. So just cool it, interject, but just don't yell. We're not having that. Just going to ask to assist the House. Order. To assist the House, the Treasurer can remain directly relevant as well.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Now, the reason that there has been upward pressure on electricity prices is because the ageing parts of the grid are becoming less and less reliable as they get closer and closer to exiting the grid. And that's why it is so dangerously irresponsible of those opposite to abandon net zero in a way that will push power prices up, not down, and will create serious investor uncertainty, which will weaken our economy. Now, if they cared about energy prices, Mr Speaker, they wouldn't be abandoning net zero and they wouldn't be turning their back on renewable energy.
We've already had one point of order on relevance from the member for Page. So I'll just ask the order. The minister on my right will cease interjecting. I want to hear from the manager, which will have to be on another point of order.
We recognise this was the biggest hospital pass from the Prime Minister to the Treasurer that we've seen in a long time.
No, absolutely not. Resume your seat. No, resume your seat. Resume your seat. And you are now warned. Simply just, I've been very lenient today, but you simply just can't jump up and say whatever you feel like. I gave you the benefit of the doubt, and you took advantage when I gave you that. So you are now warned. I don't want any more of that behaviour. Everyone will be shown respect when they raise their point of order on relevance, which I've been crystal clear today. But to do that is not fair on everyone else. I think everyone can realise that. I want the Treasurer to be directly relevant to the question, and he has 36 seconds to go.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As the Treasury and others have made very clear, if we want to see downward pressure on electricity prices, the best way to do that is an orderly transition to net zero. And that's why it beggars belief. That's why it beggars belief that those opposite have taken a different tack, Mr Speaker. Their policy would push power prices up, not down. And that is the view of a dozen energy retail CEOs and a number of other experts that we would quote if we had more time, Mr Speaker. Now, as I said a moment ago, it was bad enough that they opposed our cost of living help, bad enough they opposed our tax cuts, worse now that they want to push power price.
Before I call order, I'm just going to bring a little bit of order back to the House and some decorum, because I would like to inform the House that present in the gallery who's now joined us is Mr Marko Primorac, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance of the Republic of Croatia. I'd like to acknowledge a great friend of the Parliament, the Ambassador of the Republic of Croatia to Australia, Her Excellency Ms Betty Pavlic. Welcome to you both. I give the call to the honourable member for Corangamite.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering for Australian workers, and what could place this at risk?
The call to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations.
Well, thank you, Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for Corangamite for the question, but also her advocacy on behalf of working people right around this country. Now, the Albanese government has delivered the most significant workplace relation reforms since the Fair Work Act was introduced, and they are delivering higher wages for Australian workers. Now, of course, as mentioned by the Treasurer, the latest ABS data released last week shows that under the Albanese Labor government, we've seen the longest run of real wages growth in a decade. Now, one of the policies that's delivering significant pay increases for hard-working Australians is our Same Job, Same Pay reforms. The Albanese Labor government introduced this change, which was based on a very simple idea. If you're doing the same work, you deserve to be paid the same. But this wasn't happening, and we had seen workers employed by labour hire receiving significantly less than other staff that they worked alongside. Well, our government has fixed this. It's been just a year since the pay rises started to flow as a result of our Same Job, Same Pay changes. On Friday, I met with a group of flight attendants who, before our laws, were wearing the same uniform, doing the exact same job and getting paid $20,000 less than direct employees working alongside them. And our laws have fixed this, delivering fair pay for thousands of workers across a range of industries. Domestic flight attendants like Thomas, who told me that since these pay rises under the Same Job, Same Pay laws have kicked in, he and his co-workers now have, and I quote, dignity and equality, and he can now afford to take a holiday. Our government is working hard to deliver for people like Thomas. Now, I am asked about whether what could put at risk these pay increases. Well, I want to be very clear. The biggest risk to working people's wages and jobs are those opposite. Just a few weeks ago, while the Leader of the Opposition was trying to deflect attention and save her job, she reignited the old Liberal Party industrial relations playbook by threatening to roll back the very reforms that are delivering better wages and conditions for working people. The Liberal and National Party haven't changed. They aren't listening and have no ideas and, of course, are just focused on themselves. The only job the Leader of the Opposition cares about is her own job. And while those on the other side fight and bicker and argue, there's only one side of this parliament that's committed to working Australians. That's the Albanese Labor government, and we'll get on with that job.
Call to the member for O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, I refer to warnings in the recent Australian Energy Council report in which a CEO of an energy company said, and I quote, "Bills will increase for the next decade." Prime Minister, why is the part-time Energy Minister, full-time President, more concerned with the next decade of COP negotiations than he is with the next decade of power bills for Australian households and businesses?
Call the Minister representing the Minister for Energy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Thanks to the honourable member for his question. Those opposite have been quoting an Australian Energy Council report. I think I heard Shadow Minister Tehan quoting from that report earlier on. They are either being tricky or they are wilfully misrepresenting the report of the Australian Energy Council. And here's what it says. I'm quoting. The AEC supports the transition to net zero emissions by 2050 on the premise that the least cost, lowest impact pathway is an energy system dominated by renewables, brackets wind and solar, including rooftop solar, and firmed with battery storage, gas and pumped hydro. There is generally broad alignment across industry about this energy mix. They also say AEC members understand the urgency of climate change and the crucial role the energy industry must play to support Australia's net zero ambitions. Australia's energy transition is irreversible. There is no turning back, Mr Speaker. And so those opposite, in arguing to abandon net zero, are arguing for even higher power prices. They are smashing investor confidence and investor certainty, and they would be weakening our economy as a consequence, Mr. Speaker. And for what? Just so they can win this unedifying race to the far right in their own party room, one after the other, trying to outdo each other on having a more extreme position on net zero, Mr. Speaker. Now, when it comes to renewables and when it comes to the orderly transition to net zero, this is what a dozen energy retail CEOs have had to say. The least cost, lowest impact pathway is an energy system dominated by renewables and firmed by battery storage, gas and pumped hydro, as I just said. Joel Gilmore, an expert from Griffith University. It's very clear that relying on coal and gas is going to be more expensive than renewables. To fight against net zero is fighting against gravity. Rob Wheels from Squadron Energy. We know that Australia's coal fleet is nearing the end of its economic and technological lifespan, with coal plant outages driving higher price periods. Coal is killing affordability and reliability. What about Frank Calabria from Origin then, Mr. Speaker? The cost of renewable energy and battery storage is increasingly competitive, which means our cost of energy is expected to be more economical through a combination of renewables, storage and Origin's fleet of peaking power stations, Mr. Speaker. Tony Wood, the Grattan Institute. The existing ageing coal plants will continue to be retired or become very expensive to maintain. There is really nothing in the Liberals' announcement that will reduce power prices, Mr. Speaker. Now, we know what's really going on, Mr. Speaker. Those opposite have completely vacated the field when it comes to rational, responsible economic policy. And we see in Nikki Savva's book that they're all lining up to dump on the former leader. They're all trying to blame Peter Dutton for their woes, Mr. Speaker. In Peter Dutton's defence, look what he had to work with over there. The least talented, most divisive, most divided frontbench in memory.
The House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Spence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. How will the Albanese Labor government's world-leading social media minimum age law help to protect young Australians?
The call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for Spence for his question and for his commitment to keeping South Australian kids safe online. Mr. Speaker, delaying access to social media until the age of 16 will protect young Australians at a critical stage of their development. Don't just take my word for it. Last sitting week, the PM and I met with 12-year-old Florence from the Friends School in Hobart, her mum Romany and her idol and mentor, neuroscientist Dr Leela Landowski. Last term, Flossie did a school assignment on the scientific understanding of brain development through neuroscience prompts. And the motivation for her assignment was to help her school friends better understand the evidence behind our social media minimum age laws. To show that Parliament didn't just increase the minimum age because we're all old and boring and out of touch, but because we want what's best for them. In her research with Dr Leela, Flossie found out about the dopamine loop. Dopamine is a hormone that makes you happy and it triggers your reward system. But Flossie found that the problem with social media is that it's like we're hooked up to a dopamine drip, getting constant hits, watching videos and getting likes and comments. But this is bad for our brains because we get used to feeling happy all of the time and it can make real life feel boring. Flossie's findings were backed up by Dr Leela, who shared that young brains are particularly vulnerable to social media because they're developing brains and they're going through a huge rewiring process, learning how to navigate the world and be best versions of themselves. And during these vulnerable times, their brain is driven to doing risky things that feel good. They learn that if I behave this way, people will like me, and if I behave this way, people won't like me. And that's necessary to becoming a fully functioning adult. But because young brains are so attuned to needing social approval, it means they're more likely to be influenced by the content that they are consuming. And that is exactly why, last year, the Albanese government legislated a minimum age to access social media accounts, to give young people like Flossie and her schoolmates 3 more years to build their community and their resilience in the real world, to become the best version of themselves and to find out who they are before platforms assume who they are. And it will give parents like Flossie's mum Romany a bit of peace of mind that their child isn't the odd one out in their class because they don't have social media. Because from 10 December, nobody under 16 should have a social media account.
Give the call to the member for Warringah.
To the Prime Minister. The government's recent reported retreat from banning online gambling advertising would be a terrible sellout to Peter Murphy's legacy and a failure to protect the millions of Australians whose lives are ruined by relentless gambling advertising preying on vulnerable Australians. If this report is true, gambling harm will continue to increase unchecked. So is it the government's position that relentless gambling advertising online on vulnerable Australians is acceptable?
Call to the Prime Minister.
No.
Order. Give the call to the member for Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Home Affairs. How is the Albanese Labor government helping to protect communities from people who would seek to undermine social cohesion and spread hatred?
Call to the Leader of the House.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Hughes, and it's good to have somebody as the member for Hughes so committed to bringing people together in his own community as well. People may have seen that AFP Commissioner Chrissy Barrett is currently heading off to the Interpol conference, where working with police around the world has indicated, among other issues, that she'll work, and I quote, to ask relevant partners to share more information about hate groups, including Nazi supporters, and to provide advice from their lessons learned over the years. As well as this being a police issue, it's also been an extraordinary issue in the Australian community for scenes that we have seen recently. Earlier this month, there was a disgusting demonstration of neo-Nazism and racism on display outside the New South Wales Parliament in Sydney. Rows of men, evenly spaced apart, all clad in black, with the same blank and hateful expressions, holding an anti-Semitic banner and chanting slogans of the Hitler Youth. One of the participants there was not an Australian citizen. He was a visa holder, he was a guest in this country, and he is no longer welcome here. His visa was cancelled and the Australian Border Force detained him. The man is currently in immigration detention, awaiting removal from our country. There's a really simple principle. If you're on a visa, you're a guest in the country. And just like if you're a guest in somebody's home, if you turn up to wreck the place, you'll be asked to leave. We're setting a standard for Australia. The last thing people want is for the conflicts or hatreds of overseas to be imported here. Modern Australia and multicultural Australia are the same thing. And someone who gets involved in that sort of movement should not pretend that somehow they are being patriotic about our country. They are people who hate modern Australia. The priority of this government, and I'd say this parliament, is to defend the right of every Australian to be safe and to feel safe. The neo-Nazi who is now in immigration detention had a view that there are people who should leave Australia. Well, he can lead by example and leave by example.
On indulgence, the manager to associate his remarks to the minister.
Yeah, no, thank you, Speaker. It is the minister is to be commended on his swift and urgent action in relation to this, and we stand ready to assist the government, especially to get to the bottom of exactly how a movement like the Nazi movement can officially apply for and have a protest outside Parliament and the New South Wales government, and also to make sure that these extremists are tackled every way possible.
The call to the member for Barker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. The CEO of one of Australia's energy retailers recently warned, and I quote, "The cost of this transition is really going to affect the people who can afford it the least, so the people that are already struggling to pay their power bills are going to get slammed with more cost." Prime Minister, why is the part-time Energy Minister full-time President globetrotting around the world seeking to broker global climate conference communiques instead of helping struggling Australians at home?
Call to the Treasurer representing the Minister for Energy.
Mr Speaker, those are not conflicting objectives, because the global shift to net zero is a massive economic opportunity for our country, our economy and for its people. And I think if anybody is scratching around for a reason why those opposite are unfit for office, it's all these questions that suggest that Australia should not have an influential voice in the direction that the world is taking on energy. On this side of the House, we're providing electricity bill relief. We had the gas caps. We've got the batteries subsidies, which are working extremely well. And we're introducing cleaner, cheaper, more renewable, reliable energy into the system. Now, if those opposite really cared about power prices for Australians, they would support our efforts to introduce that cleaner and cheaper energy. But also, Mr Speaker, if they really cared about lower electricity prices for Australians, they wouldn't have come up with this economic insanity, which is to try and run interference on an orderly transition to net zero in our economy, Mr Speaker. Now, I'm asked about energy CEOs, Mr Speaker, and I've made it clear, whether it's Frank Calabria from Origin, whether it's a dozen energy retail CEOs who issued the report, Mr Speaker, whether it's Mark Collette from Energy Australia, whether it's Damien Nix from AGL, sensible, rational, responsible people all have the same view, that if you care about energy prices, it's about cleaning up the mess that we inherited from those opposite when they let 4 gig go out of the system and only put 1 gig back in. And we have been working away very urgently to try and introduce more of that cleaner and cheaper energy, Mr Speaker. Now, if they cared about energy prices in this country, they wouldn't be going out of their way to create this extreme investor uncertainty, which will weaken our economy, Mr Speaker. Now, I say this to those opposite. It is a fair effort, Mr Speaker, to have a less responsible approach to net zero than Scott Morrison did. But that's what they've achieved, Mr Speaker, and you know why they're doing it. They couldn't give a toss about electricity prices for Australians. All they care about is the internal politics of the coalition party rooms, and that's what we're seeing with this unedifying spectacle, Mr Speaker.
Has the Treasurer completed his answer? Yeah. Give the order, and the member for Cowper was continually interjecting after he was warned. So I'm feeling, just feeling generous. I know you're looking like you're packing up, but just order. Just reminding everyone it's a definite signal not to interject once you've been warned. Order. We welcome back the member for Holt with her question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its commitment to strengthen paid parental leave, and what other approaches has the government been asked to consider?
Call to the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Holt for her question and welcome her back with baby Ilya. Congratulations. I know that she's a big supporter of paid parental leave. It's hard to imagine that before the Rudd and Gillard governments, Australia was one of the very few developed countries that didn't have a paid parental leave scheme. It was Labor that first introduced the scheme, and it's this Labor government that has expanded it. In fact, under this Prime Minister, Australians receiving paid parental leave are about $12,000 better off. In fact, we've almost doubled the paid parental leave entitlement, and about 180,000 families are benefiting every year. Those families are getting more time, an extra 2 weeks this year, another extra 2 weeks next year. They're getting more money with higher payments and paid parental leave, getting superannuation for the first time. So in retirement, those people will be about $4,500 better off. They're getting more flexibility, with parents able to take more time off together, and more people are eligible than ever before. And of course, when those parents get back to work, they also benefit from cheaper childcare, thousands of dollars off the cost of childcare. But of course, those opposite have always been deeply divided on paid parental leave. From the days of Treasurer Hockey calling mums getting their paid parental leave double dippers, from the former Prime Minister Scott Morrison calling them rorters. Double dippers, by the way, was on Mother's Day, a stunning act of timing. And then more recently, the member for Goldstein saying, "To me, PPL is a very bad scheme. It's not my choice that women have children, it's genetic." And of course, if that's not enough, we've had the members for New England, for Bowman, for Barker and for Canning try and hijack the debate on baby Priya's bill. Now, to her credit, the Leader of the Opposition properly supported that bill, and indeed it should have been above politics. Instead, we had these blokes trying to hijack the debate, implying that women would get pregnant, have a late-term abortion to receive an entitlement to paid parental leave. While the Liberals and Nationals continue to be divided on paid parental leave, on this side of the House we are absolutely clear. We support families, we support new mums, we support those families with their beautiful new babies, and if a family has that terrible tragedy of stillbirth, we will support them too.
Call to the member for Ryan.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Chair of the Standing Committee on Social Policy and Legal Affairs, the member for Boothby. The 2023 Murphy report of the Social Policy and Legal Affairs Committee recommended implementing a comprehensive ban on all forms of gambling advertising. Can you confirm for the House that this was the recommendation of the committee, that the government has not responded to the report, and inform the House of any procedural steps taken by the committee to secure a response to the report from the government?
I have a problem with that, but look, under the standing orders, those sorts of questions can only be asked on specific details, not the policy content that the chair would be responsible for. So you'll have to rephrase it, otherwise I will rule that question out of order. We simply aren't going down. It's got to be about the process and timings, not about the policy.
We'll ask the minister then. I'll rephrase the question and ask the minister, if that's acceptable to the Speaker. My understanding was that under Standing Order 90 that a question like that could be asked of a committee
Only
chair.
on specific details, not policy.
Okay.
Look, to be fair to the member for Ryan, address the question to a minister and it will be a lot easier for the House to deal with.
It has now been almost 2.5 years since the Murphy report recommended banning gambling advertising. In that time, Australians have lost well over $60 billion. Why are you putting the interests of Sportsbet ahead of the interests of ordinary Australians?
That was the question to the Minister for Communications. You'll need to indicate, Member for Ryan, who the question is to.
The Minister for Communications. Thank you very much, Speaker.
The Minister for Communications will be able to address that, the topic of the question she was asked.
Thank you very much for the question, Member for Ryan. As you would have heard before, the government has delivered the most significant online wagering harm reduction initiatives of the past decade, including launching BetStop and banning the use of credit cards for online wagering. BetStop is the most significant gambling reform of the past decade, and it was this government, the Albanese government, that delivered these reforms, and we're really proud of the positive impact that it's having. And I'd be pleased to update the House of Representatives that the BetStop has now officially reached 51,079 registrations, 38% of whom have chosen a lifetime ban. Mr Speaker, that is over 50,000 people who have been able to block access to all phone and all online gambling providers. Mr Speaker, I've had meetings with harm reduction advocates, with broadcasters and with sporting codes as we seek to further minimise the harms of gambling, and I have not met with any gambling companies.
Order. When the House comes to order, give the call to the honourable member for Banks.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government strengthening Medicare and making it easier to see a bulk billing doctor? Why is it so important to lift Medicare and bulk billing after a decade of cuts and neglect?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability, the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker, and thanks to the member for Banks. He and I visited the Health Hub at Narwee only a few weeks ago. I'm delighted to say that the Health Hub has registered as a bulk billing practice for Medicare, bulk billing all of their patients all of the time. And as well as receiving bulk billing payments for all of their patients, including those without a concession card for the first time, Mr Speaker, that practice will also receive an additional payment of 12.5% on top of their Medicare income because they are 100% bulk billing. And the Health Hub is just one of 18 clinics in the Banks electorate, Mr Speaker, who are now 100% bulk billing clinics. Almost 2,800 practices have now registered as 100% bulk billing clinics, Mr Speaker, and that number includes well over 1,000 who last month were charging gap fees, but this month are bulk billing all of their patients all of the time, Mr Speaker, and that number is increasing every single day. And for Labor, for the member for Banks and for everyone on this side of the House, that matters, Mr Speaker, because for Labor, bulk billing is the beating heart of Medicare. That is why back in 2023 we tripled the bulk billing incentive paid for bulk billing concession card holders, pensioners and kids, turning that bulk billing rate around, which now sits at comfortably over 90%, Mr Speaker. It's why we delivered the 3 biggest general increases to the Medicare rebate since Paul Keating was Prime Minister, Mr Speaker, easing the squeeze after the Liberal Party's Medicare freeze. And it's why, Mr Speaker, we delivered this record investment this month again, Mr Speaker. Now, unapologetically, some of our biggest commitments at the last 2 elections from this Prime Minister have been to deliver a stronger Medicare, and we're delivering on every single one on those commitments. We're delivering more bulk billing for more patients, more of the time. We're delivering more urgent care clinics, 47 of which will open over the next several weeks. We're delivering more doctors, including medical school places the Education Minister talked about earlier today, and we're delivering even cheaper medicines again on the 1st of January, Mr Speaker. These are all essential after the decade of cuts of neglect which the Leader of the Opposition is interjecting about time and time again. A Leader of the Opposition who, as Health Minister, distinguished herself as the only Health Minister in history never to increase the Medicare rebate once. A big donut from the Leader of the Opposition, Mr Speaker, a Health Minister who extended Peter Dutton's Medicare freeze from 2 years to 6 years, Mr Speaker. It's no wonder the Australian people know who to trust in Medicare, and it's not those opposite.
Call the Prime Minister.
I ask further questions be placed on the notice paper.
I thank the Prime Minister. I've just got to deal with a matter the member for Page has indicated, and then the member for Wannon, then we have some reports, and then the papers. So the member for Page is seeking the call.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 105B, I wish to draw your attention to overdue questions in writing, questions numbers 26 through to 56. On the 25th of August, I asked the Minister representing the Minister for Trade and Tourism a number of questions of importance to the Australian community. 91 days later, I still have no response to any of them. Mr Speaker, can I ask that you write to the Minister and seek their explanation as to why they have chosen not to answer my questions in writing within 60 days?
I shall write to the Minister as the standing orders allow. The member for Wannon is also claiming to be misrepresented.
Personal explanation,
Does the member claim to be misrepresented?
Yes, yes.
You may proceed.
In question time today, the Prime Minister stated that the Coalition opposed Australia's bid for the United Nations Security Council, and I quote, "It should be a source of bipartisan pride when Australians succeed, just like we did for the UN Security Council." We actually
just to pause
supported
the member for Wannon. I'll deal with the Leader of the House on a point of order.
This standing order is not available when you believe your party has been misrepresented. It has to be personal to the individual. Otherwise, this standing order is not available.
Yeah. Under the standing orders, it is a personal explanation. So we've dealt with this matter before. If it's a collective, the opposition, a government, previous governments, it's hard to take offence on part of everyone. It's normally if the Prime Minister had, I'm just trying to work with the member for Wannon here. Yeah, if the Prime Minister had said the member for Wannon had not supported, that's the way the standing order is intended. It's not a global collective effort. The member for Wannon.
How could we get the Prime Minister to correct the record? Is there a means for us to do that?
Well, if you feel that there was an error or you're disagreeing with what a minister has said, well, you may wish at the time to jump and say that that is, a mislead or perhaps an inference on a member. But once again, it's when we had that issue last week as well. It's difficult when it's a collective.
He's saying we support it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you've also made your point. So we've had the best of both worlds in that one as well. Yeah. Okay. I present the Auditor General's report, reports number 5 to 9 for 2025-26. Details of the reports will be recorded in the votes and proceeding. We shall move to the Leader of the House with papers.
Speaker, these documents are tabled in accordance with the list circulated to the honourable members earlier today. Full details of the documents will be recorded in the votes and proceedings.